Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's community event. We are here with Justin England, the VP of Security here at Chia, and we're going to be talking today about security as it relates to Chia and our recent SOC 2 certification. If you have any questions for Justin during the event, please feel free to add them to the Zoom Q&A or in the YouTube chat, and we will address them throughout the event. So without further ado, Justin, welcome. I know the
Thank you.
community has been clamoring to hear from you again soon, so it's great to have you here. Just in case there are some folks who don't know you, would you like to do a quick introduction?
Absolutely. Yeah. For the people who don't know me, hi, I'm Justin. I run security and operations here at Chia. I was one of the really early hires at Chia, and I've kind of grown into my role of owning security compliance and regulation, as well as managing our operations stuff with my partners on the operations team. I've been here for a long time. I know a lot of things about blockchain and a lot of things about securing blockchains and learn more every day.
Awesome. Well, let's jump right into some questions about security. I have a few here to start out with. Again, if you have questions, feel free to add them to the Q&A and we'll ask Justin them. So specifically about the SOC 2 certification, which was our recent announcement.
Mhm.
What exactly is that certification and how is it significant for Chia?
Yeah, so SOC 2 or SOC statement of control audits are a sort of common language that the IT industry or the technology industry has kind of centralized around. There's other competing regulatory standards, ISO, if you're from Europe, you may have heard of as well. This is one of many regulatory regimes that you can prescribe to. What we've done here is we've gone through the SOC 2 certification process. It's one of their three tiers: SOC 1, SOC 2, SOC 3. They're kind of faced at different, basically satisfying different regulatory sets of requirements to say, these are the things we do. Here's our common language that we share. SOC 2 is around data security, integrity, development process, monitoring, reliability, response to incidents, that sort of thing. Basically, the things that are involved in the daily care and feeding of operations and security for any software project, but typically or specifically very important to things that are in highly regulated industries like finance or government agencies and that sort of thing have these stronger regulatory requirements that they need to shorthand to communicate. SOC 2 certification and the report that's generated with it provides that, so that if we're being vetted as a vendor, if we are trying to communicate to a partner, here's our stance, here's the things we do, here's our approach. It gives us a peer-reviewed, third-party reviewed, audited, with the evidence audited document that we can hand to anyone and say, we stand behind this. This is what we do every day, and here's the proof. And so that kind of shortens development cycles, shortens review cycles, and makes it a easier for me to reach out to a CTO or a CISO at another company and kind of come to terms on like, here's how we approach this control. Here's how they would prefer we do it, that sort of thing, as opposed to kind of just us, not being able to meet up on uh, how we do things or tools we use or that sort of thing.
Gotcha. You mentioned other types of certifications like ISO. We have a question if we're approaching any other certifications like ISO or privacy certifications.
Yeah, so ISO is definitely has always been a goal of ours. One of the things that makes ISO a little more complicated that we weren't able to get it into this audit cycle is that they prescribed things that as a startup we typically don't do. We don't have strongly defined roles for executive leadership. They're more loosely defined around the skill sets that executive leadership has. We have more of an ad hoc team building style. ISO, because it's more of a European standard, has very prescriptive things around how you hire, when you hire, how you progress people through the ranks, how you train them. All of those are really good ideas and really strong things to put in place. It's just at a maturity level that we're at as a smaller company, we're not there yet. We will eventually get there, but it just wasn't something we were able to stretch and get done. And we figured we would focus on the things we can really get done that are very, very important security wise that ISO would also agree with, but that we're not quite able to do the other maturity things that ISO would ask for yet.
And there's a question about SOC 3. Did we apply for the SOC 3 certification as well at the same time, or are we
So yeah.
going through
So
that?
SOC 3 is a more of a informative process. We are working on a SOC 3 that we can release as more of a everybody can read this sort of document. One of the risks you have with SOC 2 actually is that as you are showing people how you defend yourself and the processes you use to create integrity in your platform, you're also saying like, here's where you could attack us. And so it's a document that you share more with a partner, and then the SOC 3 document is more the community-facing published version of sanitized controls and that sort of thing, so that we can, honestly put our cards on the table, but also kind of keep the ones that would put a glaring red X on, attack this thing to make this thing fall over, that we'd like to avoid, just, for operation's sake.
Makes sense. So, what was involved in the process for getting certified?
Yeah, so SOC process is a lot more complicated than I thought going in, to be frank with you. I've always been, an engineer or an individual contributor working in a SOC compliant environment, and from that end, doing the evidence gathering and the proving that we're following the practices. This is my first time on the leadership end of a SOC certification, and it is a lot of, really involved. You have a partner that you work with. Usually, you start the process about a year out from when you're actually being certified. Um, it basically, what they do is they pick a point in time that you're going to be audited for. So, we said we're going to be audited for the calendar or the business year of 2024, or rather 2023, sorry. And that's why no, sorry, 2024, sorry. And that's why we did our certification in 2025, so that we had a full business year of evidence from end of April through March, I believe, is our fiscal year. Um, at any rate, we gathered evidence for that year. We got with our partner at the beginning of May. We went through basically a here's how we're doing against these controls as we understand them, kind of a conversation with them. They came back to us with, here are some things that we, either need tightened up, or we need you to get us stronger evidence for, or, basically a lot of back and forth around, um, certify this, show us this working the way you're saying it's working. Maybe we correct this statement because it seems like there's a minor detail here that doesn't apply here, that sort of stuff. At the end of it, we come out with a 2-week long audit where they go through and look at all of our evidence, apply it against the controls, try to find any faults with either our control structure that we've self-defined, or the evidence in, that it's not sufficient or whatever. If everything comes up aces at the end, we collaborate with the partner to write a report, which is the SOC 2 document I referenced earlier. And then we, go back and forth on some language between our two legal departments. And at the end, we co-publish this document and kind of make an announcement that, hey, we've partnered together to do the SOC certification of these processes. Here's the document. And that's kind of what we have in hand now, is the SOC 2 certification report.
Great. We have a question here about what tools are you using for control mapping? I'm not really familiar with what control
Yeah,
mapping
so
means.
so control mapping is a concept of, um, you have control 231227, right? And it says you have to have, let's say you have to have audited employee hiring processes, or yeah, that sort of thing. There's like hundreds of them, but it basically boils down to, here is a step-by-step checklist of, here is what a secure compliant company looks like. Here's the things they do. And then you basically ascribe and say, this control is met by this thing that we do. And you basically map each internal control you have to the external control that the regulatory regime ascribes. This is it really depends on how big your control structure is and like how big your company is. As the company grows, you're going to run into a lot more of these mapping between a bunch of departments and that sort of thing. I will be honest that ours is like probably a lot less complex than you might see at like a Microsoft, right? Like, I think that because there's a bunch of divisions and that sort of thing, they really extrapolate down to, here's how this division does it, et cetera. Ours, because we are, 75 person company, or 65, or whatever size we're at now, our control structure is pretty easy to map. And so we have, I think it's like 100 or so controls that we mapped and audited for this. And we're tracking all of those in, we're using Notion for some, we're using Kissflow for some, we're using um, Jira for some stuff, and then we're mapping that all together in like report documents. We generate basically every audit cycle. We go through and we have a Kissflow project that's a checklist, and we say, like, have we got this information that ties to this control, and basically has everything in long form so we don't forget anything. And then we run through that and grab it from, the 5 or 6 different sources we use. Some of them are spreadsheets, some of them are more formal documented things in Jira, that sort of thing. It really depends on um, kind of how big the scope is, right? For the engineering team, it's far more complex because that touches the most expensive and noteworthy things. For other business units, it's kind of smaller, like, here's the stuff we do to prevent fraud and that sort of stuff.
Yeah. You may have touched on this very briefly earlier, but what kind of like unique opportunities does being SOC 2 certified open up for Chia?
Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest thing that it does is it communicates to our preferred customers, financial institutions and organizations that are looking to tokenize real world assets in high value, that we are a legitimate company. We have a legitimate verified development process. We have a strong audited security practice, and we have a repeatable, um, defined process for all the things that would make or introduce risk to them as our customer. And that's really the big thing that this does is it says we can sell you something because we are trustworthy, and you don't have to go through the process that you would to vet a non-certified partner. As a blockchain company, this was very unique. Our partner that we had that do the certification had never done a blockchain company before, which is I'm not shocked. That happens a lot for us. But I think that it puts us in a very unique competitive position versus other layer one blockchains because we do, as far as I know, we're the only SOC 2 certified layer one blockchain. And I think that's a huge statement towards we are open source, we're auditable, we're reliable. Here's a report that's a couple hundred pages long that says that.
You said it helps kind of smooth over the relationship between different companies to work with them. Is there ever an instance where that's a requirement to work with certain
Oh yeah,
companies, certain types of
yeah. I
companies?
mean, the procurement process. There are companies we've worked with before that have code names in the projects that people in the community are probably aware of, that are big financial institutions. That this was their first question. They always send you a questionnaire that's like, hey, are you guys chuckleheads? Here's 10 questions to say whether it's worth even talking about doing business with you. Usually the first one is what regulatory regimes do you subscribe to, and can you provide a report for them? And then it's, do you secure your things? Do you use a VPN? Stuff that's like a little more deep diving into the weeds. But typically, the first question you get from any serious partner, especially in finance or banking or that sort of world, is, what compliance can you provide to us? And that's a function of the regulatory regimes that those industries are under, right? Like the federal government, especially in the United States, has said, here are things you must do as that type of company. You can't do business with anyone as a vendor who doesn't do that already. And so they are kind of have to be in lockstep with that regulatory regime as well.
Gotcha. So taking like security in general, like not necessarily just the SOC 2 stuff, which is a huge development. How does Chia implement a security focused approach on our business operations, on how we develop our technologies and whatnot?
Yeah. So I mean, I think that from the ground up, and this is not a thing that I introduced to Chia. This is a thing that existed when I came on at Chia. This is a cultural thing that comes from, Bram and Gene and the leadership from the very beginning of the company. That security is a thing that you don't bolt on, that you do from step one. You think of how do I build this thing? And then the next thought you have is how would someone break it maliciously? And how do we prevent that? And I think that's baked into the culture of how we do basically everything in infrastructure and technology here at the company. And then that kind of, if you think of like concentric rings of trust, which is the model that like SOC 2 uh, literature would tell you, it's like you have your inner trust, and then that kind of spreads out into the company from the most technical to the least technical, right? We don't want to over subscribe into security for places that don't necessarily need the triple signature, quadruple check things, but we do tend to err on the side of that is how we do things here at Chia, and then find a strong reason to accept things when they need to be, which is kind of the other way that, or the opposite of how other orgs have worked in my career, right? Like a lot of large orgs view security as a cost center, and we view it as like a table stakes kind of thing. And I think that you see that everywhere, right? Like I didn't have to come in and institute a bunch of new ways to do things. I had to work with the engineering leaders we have to help align what they were doing already with what the control is going to be looking for so we can report it. And that made that a lot easier than it would have been to do an entire transformation.
Dipping a little bit back into the SOC 2 thing, we have a question. How are changes over time handled? Will there be annual audits that operations continue to be compliant with?
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to be audited every spring. I will likely spend March, April, May, and a little of June for the rest of my natural life dealing with this. With success comes that sort of extra baggage, but I think it's something that is worthwhile for the company. That's really important to maintain. And yeah, we will every year we're actually looking at um, depending on when we get the rest of the components we need to get audited together, maybe kicking off the process a little earlier this year to get a new certification out for some of the few things we missed that weren't ready for to be in scope for this SOC audit. Nothing in blockchain, but some new products and stuff we're building that they weren't mature enough yet to be audited. So we're, really excited to expand the process, and we're really excited to, like get back into it and get recertified with the things that we kind of haven't finished yet.
Awesome. Um, so when you talked about Chia's focus on security as a whole, how does that focus affect the end users in the ecosystem, either users of Chia products or of other products that might be built on the Chia blockchain?
Yeah, so there's two answers here. One of them is transparency. I try to run a very blameless, honest, open postmortem culture here at Chia, where like anything that might raise an eyebrow gets an incident, and we talk about what happened and how we mitigated it. The most recent one is going to be those NPM package compromises that happened a couple weeks ago and last week, and maybe a little bit this week. Um, and we're going to write, what little impact we saw, how we mitigated it, what we're doing to, close that hole in the future. That is a process that we've applied to everything that has ever happened since I started at Chia, and something that I hope to continue. And I think that provides uh, proof and evidence that one, there is no issue that doesn't rise to the level of like us being concerned about it, even if it becomes nothing. And two, that you can look to us as a source for this is the secure pattern. Here is how we're solving this big problem, which I hope provides confidence in the other tools we're using, how that sort of diligence applied to them as well. The other thing that this does is it gives a like a team sport effect to security in the ecosystem. It is in our best interest that everybody who participates in the ecosystem, customers, farmers, community members, are secure. And a security incident for any of us is an incident for all of us. And so keeping the community secure with communication, with prompt security patches, with 45, 90-day responsible disclosure timelines, it gives us, I think, a big edge over some other ecosystems that are a little more lackadaisical about this approach. That we can really say, like, look at what, even when we're talking to the federal government, we can say, look at, this is a patch that came out. Here is the uptake we had. We know exactly how long it's going to take us to get to consensus is secure because 51% is patched. That sort of stuff other blockchains struggle to do or can't do at all. And it's not just us. It is a team sport, everybody in the community working together, and us like kind of expanding that circle of trust one ring further than most companies do, and including the community, as opposed to like here's a patch, pick it up when you want. We're not talking about what happened that you would see at a larger company, especially a financial company or something like that.
Yeah. Do you know, like offhand, what our rate of adoption for some of those security patches are and how it compares to some other projects?
Yeah, there was a time when it was really quick. I mean, we were looking at just under a week for adoption to 51%. It is stretched. I think we're about 4 weeks right now to maximize adoption. But those numbers are um, they are skewed to the slow side because we haven't had any massive security updates that require an immediate patch. We have said like, hey, you might want to take this up as an advisory. I'm confident that we could get the number down to 2.5, 3 weeks if we, had announced the community, hey, this is really important. Maybe even quicker than that, but I'm being pessimistic because I'm a security guy. But
Mhm.
that's that turnaround time kind of meets industry standard at the 4 weeks right now, and anything below a month is pretty solid. Um, we're looking at the majority of the adoption even now in the kind of slower pattern happens within, I would say, the first 7 to 9 days, and then people trickle in as they get the news. I think that two of the big things we're doing to improve that is we're reaching out to the community developers ahead of security patches and talking to them about here's what we're doing, here's why we're doing it. Let's get this patch into your thing a little quicker than like the Mad Maxes and the H pools of the world that run their kind of their own software, reaching out to them and coordinating with them. Here's a patch that we need to take up. I think that will help bring that down, and then working on our communication style around it, kind of toning down the less important communication and really amplifying the important stuff, I think will help us with kind of adoption fatigue. I think that's really what the numbers we see are saying, is that sister releases and back-to-back pushes and that sort of thing are unfriendly to adoption cycles, and so we should be wise about how we release and when, and make sure that's really necessary. And that's kind of what we're focusing on.
We have a question here about open source software, and do external contributions to your open source software go through more rigorous checks for possible purposeful vulnerabilities introduced, etc.?
Oh yes.
Nice.
Love you guys. Keep submitting code, but I'm putting it under a microscope, right? Like I will, not only am I reviewing your code, I'm reviewing where else you've submitted, I'm reviewing how frequently you push code other places, the quality of code you push. We really, really care about keeping that circle of security as tight as possible. It is an extensively more difficult challenge than a closed source project and other projects that I've worked in the past, because the prudent thing is to turn off community access and say, go away, don't look at our code. But we've kind of pot committed to the other way. And so we have a lot of really strong process around what happens when someone submits code for the first time, the vetting we do of them then, the continued vetting we do of the contributor. And we have partners that also help us do analytics on contributors, specifically in our ecosystem and other ecosystems, and kind of track for malbehavior and that sort of thing. The worst case scenario for us actually isn't the first time malicious developer. We'd probably catch that. It's the guy who submits some code now, and in 2 years his account gets hacked and he submits a patch that's a broken patch. That sort of thing keeps me awake at night, and doing that sort of threat analytics in an open source project is a exciting challenge, but it's certainly not an easy one.
Mhm. Yeah, you always have to battle complacency, right? Getting comfortable
Yeah,
with the
100%.
status quo. So are there any planned upcoming improvements to security either at Chia or in the ecosystem that
Yeah.
you can talk about?
So we're looking at, you've probably heard about the cloud wallet stuff we're doing and the Chia Signer stuff. And if you haven't, you should go read about it because it's really cool. A couple of things that we're going to be doing in the short term are, improving the security of the Chia Signer application, which I think will go a long way to improving security of signatures across the board in Chia. Uh, for those that aren't aware, the Chia Signer app that we're putting together is sort of like a ledger, but it runs on the cell phone you already have. It's a software that we've written that can be used as a signature key, and we prefer that use it as a signature key for Chia vaults. And it basically allows you to do the same sort of third-party key-based signature flow from the secure element on your phone, which basically means that key's never going anywhere. So the hack vector then is you and not the device. As long as you don't approve a bad transaction, you can be pretty sure that nobody's going to be stealing your coins out of that vault. We're going to be looking to retrofit the way we do pre-farm custody into that system. We're also looking to get some air-gapped signature stuff into the Chia Signer app, I believe. I don't know how close we are to releasing that, but I know there's been some work on that. I think those two things combined, so that you can have offline signature as well as like the valid clear text approval of the signature, will go a huge way to improving the security of not just the pre-farm, which is already very secure, but also more importantly, the end users, our customers, our farmers, that sort of thing. Um, my biggest fear is that someone has their Chia keys on a machine, that machine gets compromised via like an npm package, and they lose all of their coins through something that had nothing to do with them or Chia. And this, proper setup of these kind of security tools prevents that sort of thing from being a problem ever again. You can literally post your key in Times Square as long as your security is set up properly with Signer app and some other tools, and you will be fine and resilient against that attack, which I don't think any other blockchain can claim. And I think that's a really, really cool thing we're going to be able to do very shortly.
Very cool. I have a couple of questions here. I think this is talking about the SOC 2 process. This question is from Chris, and he says, when doing your sample returns, and maybe you can talk about what that is, do you delegate the collection or did you do it all yourself?
Chris is teasing me here. So the sample returns are when the auditor asks you to say, this control X, here's what you've mapped it to as an internal control Y, prove it. Go show me evidence that you're doing the thing you say you're doing. In a lot of cases, it is, here is a change ticket, here is a PR. Here is a trouble ticket that came in. Here's the incident report about it, that sort of stuff. Um, Basically, the reason he's teasing me is because this is like a really extensive process, and he wants to know if I spent, like 200 hours just collecting documentation. Yes, I did do a lot of it, but no, I did not do it all. My team, and other people here at Chia outside my team who leaned in to help me gather evidence, on the finance team, on the ops team, on the engineering team. It was a lot of people, probably a dozen of us gathering evidence. The brunt of it was on me and 3 or 4 people on my team. But yeah, I mean, I don't know that one person could do it. But maybe next year I'll try. I don't know. That seems like a lot of work.
Chris asks as well about the vendor security review process as part of SOC 2,
Mhm.
um, describing a little bit about how you have to provide SOC 2 audits of your vendors to
Mhm.
create a circle, kind of a circle of trust. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as part of our audit process and for anyone else up the chain who's using us as a vendor, they ask for evidence of the SOC 2 reports or SOC 1 reports of the vendors that you're using. Um, this isn't just like gather the reports and give them to us, right? It's not like everybody does paperwork and hands it to the next guy. The implication of this process is that you are gathering the SOC evidence from the companies you're doing business with that are part of your tool chain in technology. And you are saying, basically, that it boils down to here are the things that I am responsible for. They're called CUECs. I don't remember what the acronym is in words, but it basically is these are the controls you need to do to keep yourself safe using our platform. It's mostly common sense things like don't reuse passwords, turn off an account if it gets compromised, basic things that, as a security practitioner, I can do a lot of security. If you lose your password or let a malicious person log in and change your account, there is nothing I can do about that. And that's basically what the that section of controls says. And then you account for in your audit and evidence gathering process. Here are the 30, 50, 100 controls that are from our review of our SOC documents for our vendors. Here's how we mitigate those, and it just becomes part of the controls that you also map and attest to.
Gotcha. Um, Looking for any other questions. If anyone has questions, don't be shy. Let us know. I guess I have one more that I can ask you. Talking about the security of the network, and how Time Lords provide that security and what their role is in doing that.
Absolutely. So this is a bit of a refresher, and then I'll talk about kind of secret inside information about Time Lord that we're doing as well. So we have the ASIC Time Lords that we just released recently, like last year. We pushed them out to the community. We've been running them internally for a little bit before then. That is the state of the art for doing VDF math proof. Basically, these are the time clocks for the network. They run all of the initial proofs and also verify proofs that come in from the nodes that are doing the signature block work to ensure that everybody's being honest and not using not doing work on the fly, but using pre-stored plots as opposed to trying to brute force it. These are, we've seen the one. I want to say thank you to everybody that got Time Lords and stood them up the community. Very excited to see Time Lords that aren't ours being the ones that infuse blocks. That's very cool. And that really like speaks to the resiliency of the network and the security of the network, because if we're the only ones running Time Lords, it just becomes a far riskier proposition for the network, and having that decentralized is great. Uh, Sorry, lost my train of thought. No, so time. Also, I just want to point out, Time Lords are not only the time clock, they are also the thing that does all of the block infusing for the blockchain. So the work is done by the farmer, the block is signed by them, it's pushed up to the Time Lord. The Time Lord does the actual infusing and then moves the blockchain along. So not only does it do the initial VDF proof and challenge call, but also the final work of the actual consensus portion of the blockchain. Um, Okay. Is there anything else I'm not covering or that I should mention before I dive into like what we're doing with Time Lords, or do you think that was like a good
I
summary?
I think that's a good summary.
Okay. What we're doing now, and I think is really cool, and if you guys are running Time Lords, you should look at this as well. Traditionally, we've only been using Intel-based CPUs for Time Lords, and this next generation, we're going to look at using other architecture. And so We're going to go and deploy some Timelords in all of our data centers that are the first non-Intel CPUs, and it's very exciting. It's a thing that hasn't been possible before, just because the technology wasn't there in the other CPU architectures, and now it is. And so we're going to have far more resilient network because we'll have the elephant in the room is that the last series of Intel chips that we used for Time Lords have a shelf life. They are not resilient to data center operations. They will fail over some amount of time. And so we're going to be upgrading those Intel chips, the new ones, over the upgrade period, but we're also going to have different architecture to run to mitigate those sort of single vendor risks. So that's really cool and exciting. And I'm very excited to get that deployed. And if you are running a Time Lord, I would recommend looking into that as well, because I think it's a nice failover, if you're running a high availability sort of environment.
We have a question from Chris again. Have you changed your stance on giving me Time Lords to pump voltage into them for overclocking, or is that still a no?
I mean, you can. I can say that uh, we tested what overclocking does to a Time Lord. It does not seem to like it over the long term. It may impact the longevity of your device. Because these are really expensive, like beta hardware, that basically it's the only generation that exists. We have kind of babied them and run them within operational parameters of what we have proven they will run over, the stress test time that we needed. You could certainly, overclock and be the one who infuses most blocks, and probably get up to like 30-40% of blocks would be infused by an overclocked Time Lord. But actually what I've noticed, and this is an interesting thing that I didn't expect, is that even our three clusters that are, three CPUs, basically three tower machines, and then a Time Lord hooked up to each, they should be theoretically faster than any other Time Lord on Earth except the other clusters. And geography to the signage point, like where the node is that actually did the block that's going to be infused, matters more than how fast your Time Lord is. If you hear about the block and have it infused and can broadcast that to the chain before the next Time Lord hears about it, the speed advantage doesn't matter that much. And so that was actually like a really cool thing about our security that we didn't anticipate. That is like awesome. It basically means that overclocking, sure, go ahead, and you may take a big chunk of the blocks to be infused, but you will not get them all. And I can't imagine a scenario where I could geo distribute Time Lords that are faster and better and more spread out than the ones we have. Except maybe you could go to like the very tip of South America and Africa and that sort of thing. But we're pretty well geo distributed, and we don't sign every block. And maybe those are the overclocked nodes we're seeing, but it seems like it's enough of them that it doesn't seem like that would be what everybody is doing. So geography seems to play a bigger role than we anticipated, which is very good.
Yeah, that is very interesting. That might need some more research just to see
It's
how
tough.
we can harness that a little bit for
It's tough
further
because Time Lords
decentralization.
are obfuscated, right? So we can't know that you're running a Time Lord, right? We
Hmm.
just see that it wasn't us that infused the block. It was there was a new block, and we didn't do it. Um, we could build reporting, but this gets into gray area because we've always erred on the side of not, don't tell us you're running stuff we don't want to know. I do think that if the community wanted to get together and track this information, that would be very cool. But I would urge them to self opt into it and not, give away any PII.
Right.
Be safe.
Of course. Of course. Yeah, that would be a really cool community project. So someone out there, think about it. Um, but yeah, I totally get not, wanting to have a standard of not collecting information, just to be on the safe side. Security and all that. Um, I think that's all the questions that we have so far. Oh, so Chris asked, can you expand more on that about the geography? I think you ended up answering it pretty well. Um, and so I think that's probably satisfied. But that's pretty much all the questions that I have, all the questions that the community has. Is there anything else that you wanted to say regarding security and maybe things that you think about? Um,
Yeah. So if you are in
it's
an
your time.
ecosystem that has package management as a core concept, like NPM or Rust or any of the other languages that you're including other people's code into your software projects extensively, I highly recommend considering how you protect your dev machine and yourself. Isolate your machine, development on remote VMs or VMs you're running on a vhost locally, or anything, I must say like this: assume that any package you are pulling from a package manager right now, as far as like the development ecosystem, is a malware detonation until further notice, and proceed with that security model in mind. Um, I think that it's really important for us to have a conversation as engineers about how we're going to proceed forward. I've seen a lot of really cool tools around, not pulling in NPM updates, not pulling in new Rust crates, vetting whose things come from. I think that's a great conversation to have. But I also think that the model of assuming breach is going to become the one we have to have as an industry. It's one we apply here at Chia. I assume things are going to get broken into, and my goal is to slam the door shut immediately when something happens and fix it afterwards. I don't think that any other security model is practical, and I think that's, if you're developing professionally or for fun in this ecosystem, that's the approach to take. For those of you that are aware, the most recent NPM thing, it was basically a software worm that ran via NPM install that would then jump to other NPM projects you had on your machine and infect those and push those out. And so it was like the Morris worm, but via NPM. And I don't think that it was like other viruses that have come and gone. I don't think it was the last one. And I don't think it was the cleverest one. So please, please, please secure yourselves. Um, and then on a brighter note, I do think that there's a lot of really cool like security-minded people you can follow out there. And if we don't have to plug them here, but if you guys want to talk to me on Twitter or whatever, I can tell you who I follow. I recommend that, but no matter what your role is, that you get involved with the pulse of the security industry and know who the people are that break these kind of stories. Because if you can be 3 hours ahead of the next guy, you're probably the guy that's not going to get got. Um, and yeah, that's like swim faster than the guy in the shark, but you know, he should swim faster too, probably.
Yeah, I do think that this latest NPM incident uh, was a testament to how quickly you can get on top of it. Because my understanding is that the perpetrators did not achieve what they like intended to achieve in the end, because people were on top of like
Yeah.
reporting it and kind of avoiding it.
Yeah, I will give one shout out to a vendor we use, Socket. They are fantastic, and they were on top of this all over social media talking about it. They are kind of in this space of dependency management and security analytics around contributions, and I think they were, this is very in their wheelhouse, and they were immediately on top of it. They were reaching out to us to see if we needed help with mitigation and that sort of thing, which it's always nice to, we had it, but it's nice to have a partner that is very concerned about how we're doing. And so, I cannot sing their praises enough. I think they did a fantastic job over the last 2 weeks.
Awesome. I have a one last question here for you from a viewer. What technologies, this is from Roman, by the way, what technologies from other blockchains are you inspired by? And are there any technologies that would be useful in Chia in the future?
That is a loaded question. Uh, I am intrigued by the adoption that certain things seem to get. Like, just as an example, in Ethereum, the I would have thought that the idea of moving scaling away from fees into other layers and then doing resolution in bundles and that sort of thing would not be attractive. But it seems like that is a thing that is really taken off in people's minds as a thing that is gets them around a really painful thing, which is gas fees, right? And I think that that sort of ingenuity is really exciting. And I may not 100% agree with the direction they're taking, but I do think that it is a novel solution to a very hard problem. And so, I take inspiration from the ingenuity of the people in those spaces, but also it gives me time to check my assumptions, right? Like, I would not have assumed crypto people were okay with that. It seems like by and large they are. And so that gives us signal for, assumptions that we maybe have made about a user base that aren't true. And that's signal we can feed into products we build and develop, and maybe not necessarily go with the same solutions, but certainly um, check our assumptions, right? I think that's the biggest thing. The other thing that I think is cool, and this is, maybe not something to say out loud, but I think that the inscription thing that happened in Bitcoin is very neat. Not that I liked inscriptions, but I think that that was a conversation that was a long time coming for Bitcoin. And I think that the security budget question is one that has been looming for a long time, especially in the Bitcoin community. And inscriptions as a way to create revenue is certainly an idea. Again, maybe not agree with the implementation, but I do think that especially when it's, a project is as popular as Bitcoin and so many people have as big a stake in it. That's something we certainly aspire to here. Sometimes you don't get to pick what happens or the direction things go or the technology that people like. And I think that's another strong signal that we can apply to our practice and processes here at Chia. Our technology is very different than most blockchains. And so things that work well in account models or things that work well in UTXO may not apply one-to-one here. But certainly like the ideas can propagate. And, I have a lot of faith in Bram that every time he sees some signal like this, something is cooking, that he has an improvement that'll come out the other end in a year or two. And so that's probably the place we're at with a lot of this stuff that's very brand new. But I think it's a really cool laboratory for us to kind of exist in and other blockchain ecosystems and interact with those communities and get that signal back.
Yeah, great. I think that's a good answer. Well, with that, I think we're just about done. I think we're going to wrap up here. Thank you, Justin, for joining me for the event today and for your continued focus on security here at Chia. And thanks to everyone who joined the event, asked questions. Thank you, Roman. Thank you, Chris. I hope this has been a fun, informative time for everyone. And if you want to dive deeper into this topic, we did have a recent blog post by Justin talking about the SOC 2 certification. And you can check that out on our website. And I believe there are more maybe in the works. So hopefully keep your eyes out for that. So with that, until next time, thanks everyone, and goodbye.
Thank you for having me.